Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here, and no one gets you ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors. Swing by your local Academy store or shop online at academy.com to find grills, canopies, jerseys, and more. Be a watch party legend with gear from top brands Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, all at undefeatable prices every day. Shop Academy at locations throughout Ohio, including Zanesville, Springfield, and Boardman. Fun can't lose, and neither can you with tailgate gear from Academy. Thanks to our friends over at Academy Sports and Outdoors at academy.com. Thanks to my friends at Rowback for allowing me to wear this on camera. We'll talk about them a little bit later. And thanks, as always, to the main man on the other side of that screen, Mick Walker. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. It is time to break down what we saw in Ohio State, Penn State, spin it forward to Ohio State, Purdue, talk a little bit of everything in between. How you doing, Mick?
I'm doing great, Spencer. And you mentioned Roback there. I'll give a little shout out to the guy Reed Ramsey, a four-star offensive lineman from Florida. He came up rocking a Roback Ohio State hoodie coming down the tunnel. That's how you got to know, top of the board type of guy. First guy, locker room culture, positive presence right there.
Mick had quite the busy Sunday. There were two Ohio State commitments. This isn't a recruiting channel per se. Mick does a lot of that recruiting stuff over at lettermenrow.com. And on the Talking Stuff with Berm over on Austin and Berm's YouTube channel, go check that out whenever they do those shows. I would assume they're doing one this week. Ohio State's getting busy with the spatulas. They're on the grill more than I am at this point. But this is an Ohio State current team show. So we're going to talk about Ohio State, Penn State a little bit, but really we're going to spin it forward to Ohio State, Purdue. Mick, we've both had a chance to kind of watch over everything. What are your second impressions, I guess, of Ohio State, Penn State after maybe diving a little deeper into it?
I mean, they're really the obvious ones. Jeremiah Smith is quite amazing. Carnell Tate is probably on that same level of amazing. And then I still, to the life of me, I think you and I talked about it after the game, the four of us, between Austin, Berm, and you and I, talk about it about weekly at this point. The elevations that Julian Sand has made with his game since we saw him in spring practice is kind of just crazy, and I don't really know how to quantify it. Like, we can't take you guys in there to see the practice that we saw and see how he kind of just struggled. Like, day in and day out, there was a lot of times where he's taking laps, turning the ball over, fumbling, and that's not been an issue. I mean, he had more touchdown passes and interception or incompletions on Saturday. It's just kind of stunning to see how that passing attack has morphed into what I assume is the best unit in college football.
He's the most accurate passer in the country. It's not close. I think the gap between he and Fernando Mendoza, number 2, is the same as the gap between Fernando Mendoza and like number 45. I think it's like 6 whole points or 7 whole points. It's remarkable what he's doing with the football. 45-yard passes look like handoffs. The deep ball to Jeremiah Smith was the most impressive, Mick, because it didn't even look like Jeremiah caught it. It looked like it just fell into his hands. He didn't have to do anything. It just hit him in the chest plate and the hands, and he just kept running. I could not believe how accurate that pass was. Even the over-the-middle stuff to Brandon Ennis, the touchdown pass to Bennett Christian, a couple of the passes elsewhere not named to players not named Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate were remarkable. There's obviously times where those guys are wide open, and you still have to hit those, so you still give them credit. But I just thought that the passing display was remarkable. West Lafayette might be a little wet on Saturday, Mick. We'll see. It looks like there's some clouds, maybe some rain in the forecast. Ohio State hasn't had to play in those elements yet. It'll be a different story if they do, and we'll see how they handle that. But, man, we spin this forward because Ohio State, with 3 games left, and then Michigan, even if they lose to Michigan and don't make the Big Ten Championship game, they're going to the CFP. The CFP is in almost exclusively closed, controlled environments. And so this passing attack is going to just weather through November and get through November and then get to 70 degrees and in a dome, or 75 degrees with the sun setting over the San Gabriels in Pasadena if you get to the Rose Bowl. And you are looking at a team that's going to be almost impossible to stop from a passing perspective. And that's where I kind of spin this thing forward.
Yeah, it's just Burn took a great picture of Carnell Tate's not the touchdown, the long pass, and literally it's just his hands are right there. The ball hits him. Perfect hands catch. It was amazing to see. And then you even look at like the complementary football aspect, and it's like Ohio State didn't have the best run game, but then you look at it in the fourth quarter, Bo Jackson has the 51-yard rush to get him down there to kind of set up that final touchdown. When they got the ball back after the Caleb Downs interception, there's at least one first down in there. You got a QB sneak. You got a couple of drives where you're getting or runs where you're getting 4 or 5 yards and you're able to kind of move the chains. And then like there was a 3rd and goal that they picked up with Nate Roberts blocking. There was a couple of like 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s that they got. So if you're going to get this A plus like absolutely amazing passing attack, and you just get a running game that can get you to close you games out and pick up first downs when you need them, there's not much more you can ask. Like Ohio State's not going to have this giant explosive run game where, they're breaking 15-yard runs left and right. That's just not what they really want to do, and it's not really what their team's built for at this point.
I do, though, Mick. I will say this. Bo Jackson had a couple double-digit yardage runs. Isaiah West had one 11-yard run between the tackles that I thought was really impressive in the first half when the game was still in the balance. James Peoples' 4 carries came after the game was already decided, but I think, and I actually wrote this in the Setting the Table Monday column, which is where I do 2 questions for the offense, 2 questions for the defense, something I like, something I dislike, in an early week prediction. Pardon me. I think there's a possibility that James Peoples' carries against Penn State can be momentum builders. He looked really, really excited on the field after that. That's infectious, but it's also, a good momentum driver for him. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities to gain positive momentum this season. And the last couple of games when he's been on the field late, he's getting the carries and getting yards, and he's actually getting tough yards. Against Penn State, I think he was hit 2 or 3 yards in the backfield. In August and September, I think he's falling down on that. Right now, he's getting 10 to 15 yards on those carries. So, yeah, he only had 1 carry that was really significant, an 11-yard rush. Then he had carries of 2, 5, and 1 to finish with 4 carries for 19 yards, average of 4.8. That's not great. But that 11-yard carry, I think, did say something about James where, yeah, he's running through contact, man, and he's putting his shoulder down a little bit more than he was. And for Isaiah, 4 carries for 13 yards. One of those was for 11 yards. That's another impressive run between the tackles that Ohio State hasn't had this year. But when they needed it against Penn State, they started to get it. Like you said, Bo Jackson has a 51-yard run, so you don't, how sustainable is that? I don't know. But he also had carries of 9, 8, 5, 9 again, 11 again. Like, he was running the ball pretty well. And I thought that this run game took a step forward against Penn State. Now, Penn State has been horrendous at stopping the run this year. Absolutely horrible. Before the Ohio State game, they were giving up over 200 yards a game on the ground in Big Ten play. That average goes down because Ohio State just didn't, I guess, want to do that because they could just throw it all over the yard and burn Jim Knowles' defense deep. They had 164 yards on the ground, Mick, and that's 5.1 yards a carry on a Penn State defense that, for everything that's not, still has good athletes on it. And I know I'm rambling here a little bit. The Penn State rushing defense had a lot of rushing yards, but a lot of that came against mobile quarterbacks from Mark Gronowski and Iowa. I think he had over 100 yards rushing against Penn State. Nico Iamaleava, I think, had 150 rushing yards against Penn State in that UCLA game that we thought it was an upset at the time, because it was an upset at the time, full stop. What I'm saying is Ohio State ran the ball pretty well against Penn State, and I thought for everything that the run game hasn't done this year, I thought what it did against Penn State was a good step in the right direction to be able to start to complement this passing game. And oh, by the way, they have 3 horrendous run defenses coming up against Purdue, Rutgers, and UCLA to get some momentum before you have to go to Ann Arbor and be able to run the football up there, because I know nobody wants to hear it, but you still have to be able to run the football at the last week in November.
And the fascinating thing is, I think you finally got to see some twist or just different stuff in the run game where they tried to specifically to get, Bo Jackson different looks or Isaiah West different looks. And credit to the guys that aren't running the ball as well. Isaiah West's long run, Carnell Tate had a great block. A lot of these tight ends, Max Clare, I think, blocked his butt off when you watched it through the film. Like Will Merrick did as well. Bennett Christian, obviously, he gets rewarded with the touchdown because he's done such a good job of blocking. So, there's a lot of the bones and the necessary things to have a quality run game that you can kind of lean on with this pass game are there. It's just about all putting it together, because there was a great run that I think they had blocked up, but Luke Montgomery just whiffed. That can't happen, but that has happened probably a few too many times for Ohio State this season, and that turns what should be a 5 to 10 yard run into a 1 to 2 yard gain or a tackle for loss because one of the 11 did not do his job on that play.
I thought Will Merrick had a good day blocking. I thought Bennett Christian did a nice job blocking. Nate Roberts wasn't in a lot, but when he was in there, I actually thought that he made some good contact on blocks, and that's something that I guess we haven't been able to say the entire year so far. There was a play with C.J. Donaldson running the ball in the first quarter that I clipped out for myself where Montgomery blocks it up really well. It's a pulling play. Luke Montgomery comes around to the right side. He and Nate Roberts are leading the way. They create a nice crease for C.J. Donaldson. I can't put it on the screen because of copyright rules, and we have to be able to make money to make this show. But Luke Montgomery seals it on the inside. Nate Roberts seals it on the outside. There's a clear lane between the two that could probably end up being a touchdown because the ball's a 25-yard line, and Donaldson just misses the cut. And we've seen that a lot from Donaldson this year. I'm not here to pick on C.J. Donaldson, although the fumble is probably going to cost him some carries. I'm just being honest. Moving forward, that I think if that's a handoff to Bo Jackson or Isaiah West, it might be a 25-yard touchdown run, and then we're not having this conversation. Or we're having a different conversation where, hey, that was a really good run, and Ohio State's opening touchdown of the game was a 25-yard rushing touchdown. So, like, I thought that there were really good moments from this run game on Saturday. And again, I get it. Penn State has not been good against the run at all. But neither is Purdue, neither is UCLA, and neither is Rutgers. So we're going to take this as steps in the right direction for the run game as long as they're running the ball well, even against bad defenses. It's just what we're going to do for the next 3 weeks, Mick.
Yeah, obviously that's talking about Penn State's bad defense. We can probably get into talking about Ohio State's good defense, or one of the best defenses in the country, because they just, after a rough kind of first half, they really had Ethan Grunkemeyer and Andy Kotelnicki, this whole Penn State offense in a blender in the second half.
I actually didn't think the defense played poorly in the first half. And I know that sounds weird because they gave up a 15 play. Let me make sure that we're getting that correct. I think they gave up a 15 play drive. It was either 14 or 15. It was 15 plays, 75 yards. It took up 7 minutes and 50 seconds. It was ball control. It was man ball. There was a lot of 7 offensive line. There was a lot of other things going on with this Ohio State defense and trying to get set. And Penn State was using some tempo, but also some heavier personnel. We don't see teams have those drives against Ohio State for a reason, because Ohio State's defense is really, really good. And I just think that you can kind of chalk that up as like, yeah, Penn State had a good drive on you. And the rest of the game, they didn't, because they didn't cross the 50-yard line again until the last drive of the game, other than when they were just gifted a ball at the 13-yard line to go score a touchdown from the C.J. Donaldson fumble. They had multiple drives that were, the 2 3-and-outs. They had a 6-play, 2-yard drive. They had a 7-play, 16-yard drive. They had a 6-play, 12-yard drive. Like, they were getting nothing. So I understand why you could say, and I'm not refuting your point, you could say that they didn't play well in the first half, because I think Penn State only had 3 or 4 drives. One of them was a short field, obviously. But they just kind of got you on one drive. And I'm telling you, teams are going to eventually, and every once in a while, put together a drive on you. Illinois put together a drive on Ohio State. In the second half at garbage time, Wisconsin put a drive against Ohio State's second-team defense. Texas eventually put together a drive against Ohio State, but it was one. And so, I think there's times where we can get carried away thinking like, man, that was a really long drive. The Ohio State's defense isn't playing well. But, I'm not dismissing it, because I understand. But, like, hey, sometimes they're going to put together a drive on you, and then you got to adjust. And the adjustments that Matt Patricia and this defensive staff made in the second half, oh my gosh, they were incredible. The screen game was completely shut down. They got more pressure on Grunkemeyer. I think they brought 6 on one of the sacks, the Arvo Reese sack. They brought 6 or 7 and just let the guys in the secondary handle their business as they swarmed Ethan Grunkemeyer. They buttoned everything up in the run game. Although I was very confused why Penn State went away from the 7-man offensive line stuff, but I'm not here to question Andy Kotelnicki's stupidity. They've been doing that at Penn State for 3 years now. So, I didn't think it was a bad performance from the Ohio State defense, even in the first half when they gave up 14 points, because the reality was they only gave up 7 points and C.J. Donaldson gave up the other 7. And, that's harsh, but, that's what it is.
I just think I agree with you. Obviously, the stats, the numbers, the whole results of it does show that Ohio State's defense played very well again. I just
Yeah.
think that the one drive that we saw was the first time, obviously, like you mentioned, the drive against Texas, where they kind of Ohio State was playing kind of back a little bit, kind of just trying to let the game get the ball back, kind of ice the game away a little bit there when they gave that touchdown to Parker Livingston. And there's been other drives against Illinois or maybe like Washington where they've had success, but this felt like the first drive where we've seen Ohio State's defense kind of actually on their heels a little bit, like not
Yeah.
really figuring out what they like. Penn State clearly wanted to go pace. They wanted to go some different looks to kind of mix things up, and it got to Ohio State where the fact of like Arvo Reese had to play a little more linebacker. He couldn't get on the edge a little bit. They had boxed him into some of that stuff, and obviously, like you said, they adjusted. Came out well in the second half, but this is the first time where Sonny
Yeah.
Styles, like Caleb Downs missed a tackle. There was things that were like, okay, Ohio State's defense doesn't typically do that, and they don't look like this so far this season. That's probably the one concern. But like you said, overall the results bear out that it wasn't too much of a worry.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be kind of the same thing where, we might look back at that Penn State touchdown drive and say, well, remember when Penn State did that to Ohio State? You know what Michigan's going to try to do to Ohio State on the first drive of the game just to see if they can have similar success. If you see 7 offensive linemen and a toss sweep to the boundary on the first drive to Jordan Marshall against Michigan, don't be surprised because they're going to take a look at what Penn State did on that 15-play, 75-yard drive that ate up almost an entire half of a quarter and didn't allow Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate to be on the field with Julian saying, Michigan's going to look at that and say, hey, what if we did that for 4 quarters and made this a 6-possession game? So it's going to come up again. And I understand why you'd be frustrated with it. But the adjustments that Ohio State did make there coming out of the halftime locker room, especially, I thought were really, really strong stuff from Matt Patricia and company. Mick, I don't know if you noticed this when we first logged on and we were chatting pre-show, but the folks over at Dollar Shave Club have kind of got me right, man. I'm not going to lie. Look, I got to stay fresh during the season. When you rep your team, don't stop at the jersey. Dollar Shave Club's collegiate razor handles combine grooming with glory, letting students, grads, and fans show their school spirit and style. From the sink to the stadium, shave with school pride. Visit dollarshaveclub.com. That's dollarshaveclub.com to grab your collegiate handle today. I obviously have taken full advantage. Mick has not. He's a burly fellow. All right, Mick, first look. This is kind of a quicker video because this was a blowout, and I think I think we should do a longer show on Wednesday, maybe. Maybe we'll start to actually flush some stuff out on what we want to see from the next 3 weeks before the Michigan game. Maybe we'll do closer to an hour. We'll see. Put in the comments if you want to hear more from us because we've been doing like 20 minutes trying to keep it kind of light. But if you want to hear more longer stuff from us, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you about anything really, except for, well, yeah, anything. That's fine. Mick, this Purdue team, you know them pretty well, but they also have like 60 transfers, so you don't really know them very well. In a past life, Mick used to cover the Boilermakers. He used to see the big drum every single week in West Lafayette. I'm looking at this team as like DOA, dead on arrival in the stadium. Ohio State's had some horrors in West Lafayette. I don't think this team is going to give them that. 2-7, they've lost 7 straight, 7 losses coming to Notre Dame and 6 Big Ten teams. They can't stop the run. They're bad against the pass. They're 17th in the Big Ten against the pass. They kind of emptied the tank in a night game at Michigan on Saturday and almost pulled off that upset, but it wasn't really in doubt for Michigan, even though it was a really bad performance for Michigan. Do we see anything here from Purdue that scares you?
No, because if you look at, and obviously there's the result last week with Michigan where they kind of were able to keep it closer, but that's kind of just Michigan's play style, and that's what they were able to do. So you look at the good teams that Purdue's played, the good offenses at least. I mean, Notre Dame put 50 on them. I think the USC put 30 on them after like a lightning delay. Illinois put up 40 on them. Even Minnesota put up 27, and Northwestern was able to hold them scoreless. If you're looking at the Boilermakers offensive side of the ball type of thing, there's just not a lot of things that Purdue kind of brings to the table that could challenge Ohio State. Even in the past, like you mentioned, obviously we all know the game with the Rondale Moore game. He's a talent. Like he went on and kind of dominated that game by himself. Nick Scourton used to play for him a couple years ago. He was a talented individual player. There's been Max Clear was on the roster last year. There's been individual players, and I don't think there's too many of those this year. Obviously, Devin Mockapee is somebody that's been in West Lafayette for years now. He's not going to be playing on Saturday though, so there's no real.
He's out for the year.
Yeah. There's no real individual players on this Purdue roster that you look at and go, they can give Ohio State a problem, or they can go kind of like for like with Ohio State when it comes to just athleticism.
I do think there are a couple athletes on this team. They have Ryan Turner, who's played Ohio State, right? He's an athlete. There's a couple receivers. I think they've got a former Georgia receiver on this team. The Georgia receiving room hasn't really been covered in glory lately. But, that's a Georgia level athlete, at least. Here's what I know, Mick. They've given up around 400 and some yards a game every game since the first two games. Ball State and Southern Illinois didn't crack 300. USC put up 460 on them. Notre Dame put up 535. Illinois had 507 yards of total offense. Rutgers had 543 yards of offense. Even Michigan, and I'm not putting Michigan in the Rutgers category, but offensively they're impaired, I would say. They had 398 total yards. There are games where Purdue's better against the pass, and then all of a sudden they can't stop the run. The Northwestern game, they give up 132 on the ground, 232 through the air. Michigan, they give up a $145 through the air. Bryce Underwood didn't have a very good game. It didn't matter because Michigan ran for 6.5 yards a carry and had 253 yards on the ground. They just can't seem to get stops, Mick. And I know it's at West Lafayette. I know it might be a little wet on the natural grass there, but man, it's hard to find, if you're telling me, okay, what's the path for Purdue to keep this thing close? I even struggle to find that path.
And there's even, the idea of, you're going to be on the road. You got the elements. Obviously, you need the rain, the wind could affect, the Ohio State's passing attack. And we've seen nothing from Julian Sand this year to see that he would struggle, but he hasn't been in that type of situation. But even beyond that, at least when you went to Washington or you went to Illinois, you thought, hey, they're going to have somewhat of a raucous crowd that's going to be able to mess with Ohio State, a road environment. I all respect to the Purdue football fans. I know there's a handful of them, and they're all very good people. Even the people that write for our Purdue site, the Gold and Black, they're good people. But even now, their coverage starts to shift to more basketball. Fan interest starts to shift to more basketball. So it's kind of the inverse of the idea of when you play at Ryan Field, right, for Northwestern, or one of these things where maybe it's just going to be so sleepy. You got a 1 o'clock kick. It's going to be 1 o'clock local. But we've seen nothing from Ohio State this year under Ryan Day recently to show that they're going to struggle with any of these things where they're going to overlook an opponent either.
Yeah, I mean, you would think there's potential to be a sleepy environment. Ohio State might sleepwalk into this one. Purdue could catch them or something. But man, two things travel: defense and talent. And Ohio State has a really good defense, and Ohio State has better talent. So yeah, like you said, they've had different opportunities to sleepwalk through games. Even the Grambling game, which I didn't know how much they would really put into that because they had just come off the win against Texas. And obviously Grambling's the worst team on the schedule by a ton, and they're nothing like this Purdue team. I think Purdue would even beat Grambling 45-0. But you would think that was probably going to be sleepy, and it wasn't. There are other opportunities like the Minnesota game where it could have been sleepy a week after you go out to Washington and get a big win. And you come home and you think maybe there's some hangover effect there. Nothing. The Wisconsin game, it's a noon start, or it's a 2:30 start local, and there's not a lot of Wisconsin fans there, and it just seems like a dead atmosphere. And Ohio State comes out and just beats the tar out of Wisconsin very quickly, just eviscerates Wisconsin from the first drive of the game with that Carnell Tate touchdown pass. So every time you think this is an opportunity for a sleepy start for the Buckeyes, they just don't have one. And maybe there's one coming, but I'm not going to fool myself into talking about one until there actually is one. And so I just don't see that happening, especially against a team that has a dearth of talent the way that Purdue does.
And Ohio State, obviously, at this point, they know that the bigger goals are this is just a step in the process to get to the bigger goals, which you've talked about and we've mentioned, start here in a couple of weeks when you go to Ann Arbor and you try and get that win that's kind of evaded Ryan Day for a few years now.
Well, I mean, the Big Ten Championship has also evaded Ryan Day. They went hand in hand. You can't go to the Big Ten Championship game unless you beat Michigan. At least that's what the deal has been for Ohio State the last 4 years. And so this is a program that wants to win Big Ten championships. It's not just about the national title. So, they have 3 goals every year. 2 of them go hand in hand. The other one you can do without it. We just saw that last year. But like that all starts this week, and they're going to want to make a statement. The other thing that they're going to want to do, Mick, and very quickly, I'll just touch on this. I've never seen Ohio State launch a Heisman campaign the way that they did this week for Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin. They did it for Marvin Harrison Jr. in 2023. It was not this well orchestrated. Those websites that Ohio State put out are fancy. They're really nice. They got stats that kind of, trickle together. They've got stories that you can click on. Nothing from Lettermen Row, but they have stories that you can click on. They've got quotes in there. They've got different things that you can click on to learn about these guys and their Heisman campaigns. This is a well-orchestrated campaign that Jerry Emig and the staff have started. Ohio State's well aware that it hasn't won a Heisman Trophy since 2006. So I think that unless it's like hurricane force winds and rain, you're going to see Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith do some damage on Saturday. That's all I'm saying.
Because that's another thing that's evaded Ryan Day. With all the success he's had with first-round wide receivers and quarterbacks, it has also evaded him.
Yeah, congrats on your Heisman trophies, Lincoln Riley. Try winning something that matters. But, it does matter to some folks, and that's why Ryan Day and Ohio State are going to try to win one for either Julian Sayin or Jeremiah Smith. We'll see them in action again on Saturday at Purdue. Lettermen Row will be there in full force. The whole four-man crew is going to West Lafayette. Mick Walker and Jeremy Birmingham, along with Austin Ward and I. Alex Gleitman's going to hold down the fort over at LettermenRow.com. Come hang out. $1 for your first 7 days. That gets you through Purdue week into UCLA week. Nico Ayamalieva's return to the Horseshoe. For Mick Walker, I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like the video below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we'll see you over at LettermenRow.com.